Welcome to the Villarreal update with me, Jamie Campbell, brought to you by Villarreal USA. A bit of a different video this week because we've been on international break with not much happening in terms of Villarreal content. A bit of a boring one this time of year because you have the 3 international breaks in 3 months, but we're almost in the clear. One more left to go. But Villarreal actually probably pretty pleased they have another break given how the season has gone so far. Just 8 points picked up, and welcoming Alaves this weekend, who also have 8 points. So perhaps a chance to get 3 points on the board. Although we also said that of the Las Palmas game before the break that Villarreal went on to lose. But before we get to any football action, some off the field matters to take care of. Fernando Roig, the president and owner of Villarreal, has been speaking and some pretty controversial comments, I would say, based on some of the criticism he and the sporting directive, I guess, have received over the last few weeks and months. It's a strange summer for Villarreal, who sold, obviously, a number of key players. Pau Torres, Samuel Chukwueze, went out the door. Nicholas Jackson as well to Chelsea. But Villarreal didn't really strengthen on the back of those sales. They signed some free signings: Santi Gomisania, Ben Braden Diaz, Denis Suarez. But but apart from Alexander Solar, there was a paid signing. There was very little in the way of incomings, at least in terms of money spent. Ramon Terats as well on the cheap. But what we've seen so far is that's really held Villarreal back, and there's some of the reasoning. Many felt that Kike Setien didn't have a fair crack at the whip, although he did seem to fall out with the players. But many felt that it was unfair based on the fact that he didn't have that money to spend, didn't get new talent in, and so 3 of the most talented players in the whole squad sold. So there's an element of what do you expect, given the sales and the lack of incomings. But Fernando Roig has kind of hit back out at that this week in an interview here in Spain. Um, he said that it's always necessary for Villarreal to sell to stay afloat, to manage the costs, to cover the cost that it takes to run a club like Villarreal, who are competing in Europe and so on. And there obviously have been some costs over the last few years, and some badly spent money as well. When you look at players like Paco Alcacer and Arnaud Danjuma, obviously a big loss on Alcacer. And it's looking like there will be a loss on Danjuma as well, though that will depend on how he does with Everton during his loan spell this season. But yeah, Rauch has obviously he's run the club very well. You have to say that first off the bat. Everyone who supports Villarreal appreciates what he's done for the club, transformed this club's fortunes, and certainly no one wants him to leave anytime soon. But I think the criticism, is fair based on what Villarreal have achieved over the last few years. I would say, obviously, Roch wants to run the club in a debt-free manner, and that's understandable. That's good for the club. No one should be complaining about that. But it's a little bit confusing to see the amount of money that Villarreal brought in over the last few years. When you look at winning the Europa League, the prize money that brought, reaching the semi-final of the Champions League, the prize money and sponsorship revenue that brought in, the new stadium or the renovation for the new stadium, those costs were covered by La Liga and the CVC loan, for almost the whole part. And then the sales that Villarreal have made, especially over the last summer, which totaled just under 150 million, I think, or certainly over 100 million. And then the lack of incomings. I mean, Arnold Danjuma didn't cost a whole lot of money. I think it was 20 million. And you look at how much Pau Torres, Chukwueze, and Nicholas Jackson went for, like I said, over 100 million. It's not as if Villarreal have pre-spent that money on, with those departures have to cover those costs. That hasn't happened. So that's a little bit confusing, I think, in terms of how it's so necessary that the club needs that money and needs to not reinvest that money. And you also look at Unai Emery as well, I think, who left for something like 6 or 7 million in compensation from Aston Villa. And Unai Emery was a very well paid coach at Villarreal, and then he was replaced by Setien on a significantly less wage, and now Setien's being replaced by Pochettino, who's on a less wage again, which is another question from Villarreal fans, and a valid one as well, is why so little money is being invested in the managerial position. Why Villarreal have gone for this cheap option until the end of the season. And I'm not saying Pochettino won't work out. He may well turn things around by the end of the season. We hope he does. We're fully behind him at this point, but it's not an ambitious appointment, which is concerning when you see the lack of ambition the Villarreal showed in the summer transfer window. Um, but yeah, we could see an increased investment in January. Who knows in players, but it doesn't seem that way from what Roch has said. And perhaps more alarmingly is that Roch has called for support from the fans, and he said that if the atmosphere doesn't change, if fans don't get behind the club in its current version, then he will plan to leave the club. So that's kind of a little bit of a concerning threat. I think most people are general big fans of Roch, but I don't think that he needs to make that threat to Villarreal fans. It's natural that when things don't go well, then fans will criticize. You can't. It doesn't exist in a society where when things go bad, everyone's just fully trusting in the process that things will turn around. That's just how life works, how society works, how football and sport works. So for me, it's best left unsaid from Roche. He doesn't need to make that threat for me. Perhaps you'd have different views. Let us know. But um, a, it's a strange thing to say, I think, especially for a president that's been backed. He's earned the right to be backed, but fans have been behind him for many years. So it feels a little bit disingenuous and a bit I won't say ungrateful because, like I said, he's earned that support, but it feels along those lines, something along those lines. To make that comment, it feels if it doesn't feel quite right. You think you can ask for that support without making any kind of threats to leave the club. It's something we've seen many owners do across the years, but at different clubs. So that is, but yeah, I mean, let's see how this pans out. Ultimately, success will define whether people buy into this kind of um, the new version or the this segment of the project of Villarreal, where they have soul players and are not spending ambitiously and not really trying to push their way into the top four or anything like that. It seems a little bit strange. It feels like I think the biggest thing for Villarreal fans is it feels a bit like a waste given the kind of the talent they have in the squad because of all the success over the last few years in Europe. The team still hasn't achieved a top four finish, and it feels like a squad that was well capable of that. Perhaps not now. Perhaps it's a little bit past that, but certainly last season it felt like Villarreal very close to securing a top four finish, and they had the talent to do so. I don't think that's the same this season, but it feels like an opportunity is being wasted on that front, and this isn't quite the time to cut costs. But that's Roch's decision. That's at his discretion, and the people who work for him as well. In the kind of sporting directive. So we'll leave that with them, I guess. And you kind of have to get behind it. That's all the whole Villarreal fans can really do. They're not going to protest or anything like that, and neither should they. Like I said, this club has been magnificently run across the years, and I'm sure that things will turn around at some point. And hopefully, and that leads us on, hopefully we'll start to turn things around this weekend against Alaves ahead of a maybe Europa League tie next week against Maccabi Haifa. That looks like it might be postponed, that game, due to conflict between Israel and Palestine. It makes it not very safe for Maccabi to make that trip to Castellon, and we'd certainly understand if the UEFA decided to postpone that fixture. Maccabi have applied, by the way. That might change by the time you listen to this, but Maccabi have applied for that game to be postponed, just to let you know about that. Alaves, yeah, this weekend, a game Villarreal obviously should be winning at home, but we've said that before this season. Juan Foyt back in training, a big boost for Villarreal on that front. Kiko Femenia has been playing lately. Hasn't done so bad, actually. He's done pretty well, but Juan Foyt, obviously the first choice right back for Villarreal. Coquelin as well looks like he's on his way back. He's not going to play this weekend by any means. He's been in and out of training or in and out of working on the grass on his own and that kind of thing. So hopefully he's close. Jared Moreno should be fully fit now. He didn't go on international duty, so a few injury boosts for Villarreal heading into this one, and they have to turn things around somewhere. You'd hope against Alaves, who are with all due respect, a relegation candidate or likely relegation candidate for this season. These are the games Villarreal have to win at home, and if they don't, it could start to get very worrying very quickly for Villarreal. And indeed, Pochettino was, I wouldn't say under pressure just yet, but it's starting to go that way, given the lack of effect he's had in this side. And I think overall, the boringness of the play and the lack of plan, the lack of energy, all that is yeah. You could kind of understand the lack of quality defensively under Kike Setien when there was energy and there was exciting play going forward, but we don't really have any of that at the moment. So hopefully now that Pachetta's had a full international break to work with his players without the interruption, distraction of games, hopefully he's had time to work on that, and hopefully we'll see some better results starting this weekend against Alaves. So in the meantime, don't forget, as ever, to check out Villarreal USA for all your latest Villarreal content in English. Head to the Twitter as well. We always have plenty going on, and we'll be back with another video after the Alaves game next week.